There is a quiet, deep feeling that can descend when existing itself begins to feel unbearable. Not a wish to die, but a longing to vanish. It's not about ending life through action, but about escaping the weight of being alive. For many, it's a desperate hope that everything could just stop. Not just for a moment, not just to rest, but to pause the entire world. A massive, impossible yearning to be forgotten, to disappear. Sometimes it shows up in the thought, what if I could just fall asleep and never wake up? Not because life should end, but because continuing to carry it feels too heavy. There's no plan, no harm, no violence. Just the wish to slip away into silence, to no longer perceive, no longer feel. This kind of longing doesn't always come from crisis. It grows quietly beneath the surface. From sadness, from exhaustion, from years of emotional weight. There can be gratitude for still being here, for not wanting to die, yet at the same time, a deep ache to simply not exist. The world becomes too much. The noise, the expectations, even the smallest tasks, and the thought of vanishing starts to seem like a kind of mercy. Sometimes it happens in a moment of stillness, standing in front of dark water, looking into it and feeling something stir. Not the urge to drown, not even fear, just a strange, quiet pull to no longer be. It's not about dying. It's about no longer having to endure. These thoughts usually arrive in silence, late at night, when nothing distracts you. When the noise of the world fades and you're left alone with what you've been carrying, that's when the mind begins to whisper its quiet plea. But it's crucial to understand this isn't the same as actively wanting to die. There's a difference between passive and active suicidal thinking. The contrast is real. It's like standing on a train platform, not to jump, not to end anything, but wishing the train would never come. Just wanting time to pause, wanting life to let go of you without asking you to let go of it. But what deeper forces drive the wish to disappear? Beyond emotional exhaustion, there is something more fundamental, a quiet confrontation with what it means to exist at all. Philosophers and spiritual traditions have long touched on this tension, the paradox between our instinct to live and the suffering that often comes with consciousness. This longing isn't always about despair. Sometimes it's a way of exploring the contradictions of being human, how we're wired to protect our lives yet still reach moments where we long to let go. It's a silent resistance against the survival instinct, a whispered wish to turn that drive off just for a while. When the idea of disappearing arises, it doesn't just reflect pain, it challenges the very concept of self. The thought of no longer existing begins to unravel identity. The I begins to feel fluid, insubstantial. The usual sense of self, all the stories, labels, and roles, starts to dissolve. And if those fall away, what remains? It's a frightening yet deeply philosophical question. Imagining non-existence becomes a strange kind of meditation, an unintended exploration of self beyond form. Sometimes this desire becomes less about death and more about release, a longing to escape not just the world, but the noise within. It's like being pulled toward a kind of peace, the peace that lives behind all the striving, all the becoming. There can even be a sense of hope in this vision, a vision of being held, cradled in silence. And yet, it's often tinged with sadness too. Because wanting to vanish, even gently, means that being here has become too much. We build meaning, identity, and purpose out of fragile materials, memories, dreams, expectations. When those fall apart, when they feel hollow or impossible to hold, the structure collapses. And in the wreckage, a quiet, sorrowful idea emerges. If this is who I am, and this is what life feels like, is there any point in carrying it any further? That question may not be shouted out loud, but it echoes deeply within. It's not just psychological, it's existential. A spiritual ache that asks, not whether life should end, but whether there's any rest to be found while still alive. At the heart of this struggle is the question of meaning. When life feels empty, when each day seems to stretch into another without purpose, suffering feels sharper, heavier. Existential nihilism, the belief that life has no intrinsic meaning, can take hold in these moments. And when it does, even the smallest things can begin to seem pointless. In this view, everything, love, ambition, identity, starts to feel like an illusion. Achievements seem temporary. Losses feel permanent. Hopes don't inspire anymore. They just hurt. The ache of living grows more unbearable when there's no meaning left to hold it. Some thinkers have explored this despair deeply, describing how we move through life expecting purpose, only to eventually realize that so much of what we do is out of habit, not belief. The absurdity of life shows itself when all our actions feel hollow, when even our desires seem disconnected from anything real. In these moments, it's easy to feel exiled, not from a place, but from meaning itself. The story that once held everything together begins to fall apart. And when that story dissolves, a terrifying question can follow. If none of this means anything, why keep enduring it? It's a painful thought. And yet, strangely, even as this despair arises, most people continue living. Even when everything feels meaningless, the body still breathes, the heart still beats. There's a kind of resistance that remains, one that's not always rational. It's not hope exactly, it's more like instinct. Some say we live because we haven't fully answered the question of meaning. Others believe we continue simply because life is a habit, one we fall into before we even know how to question it. The drive to stay alive is ancient, woven into every cell. Even when the mind gives up, something deeper still clings. Still, nihilism can plant seeds of despair. When meaning is lost, whether through trauma, isolation, or disillusionment, it leaves behind a spiritual void. And in that emptiness, the idea of disappearing doesn't feel dramatic. It feels rational, like a response to a world that no longer speaks to the soul. It's vital to understand that having these thoughts doesn't mean something is wrong with a person morally. This isn't about weakness or failure. Depression, trauma, and deep existential exhaustion can twist the perception of life until disappearing feels like the kindest thing one could do for themselves, and even sometimes for others. The mind may begin to rationalize vanishing as mercy. And then, layered atop that sorrow, comes guilt. A deep, wrenching shame for even having the thought. People who love their families may feel they are betraying them just by wanting rest. Yet the conflict inside can become almost unbearable, a war between a quiet longing to escape and the desperate wish to stay for the sake of others. One inner voice says, "You shouldn't feel this way," while another pleads, "But I can't go on like this." That tension alone can break a person down. But here's the truth. Feeling like this doesn't make someone beyond saving. These feelings don't mean a person is broken. They're signs of pain that can be understood, treated, and eased. As someone once wrote, "All I know is that there's always a way out of pain and suffering, and I firmly believe that suicide is not it."